In example 3, we're given that angle 4 is congruent to angle 7. And notice in our proof, that step is given. I want to prove angle 5 is congruent to angle 6. We're just going to have to write, on this one, we're just going to have to write in our reasons. Now, we know angle 4 is congruent to angle 7. Why is angle 5 congruent to angle 4? And why is angle 7 congruent to angle 6? Notice they're across from each other. That's one of the theorems we just talked about on the previous page. That's your vertical angles theorem. If you do this on your textbook, sometimes they call it the vertical angles property. As long as you have vertical angles, I don't care what you write. Now notice everything's congruent. So now we're going to say, since we know angle 4 is congruent to angle 7, and angle 7 is congruent to angle 6, and angle 5 is congruent to angle 4, we can say angle 5 is congruent to angle 6 by the transitive I think I said that wrong. Angle 5 is congruent to angle 7 by the transitive property. Therefore, since we know angle 5 is congruent to angle 7 and angle 7 is congruent to angle 4, we could say angle 5 is congruent to angle 6, also by the transitive property. Transitive property occurs quite often. We like to use that one. And since we're saying congruence, we're going to say congruence. Now, let's take a look at some theorems that we don't have names for. So we just have to write these down if they show up. First thing, perpendicular lines form 4 right angles. So if I have 2 lines that are perpendicular, that is, I know A is perpendicular to B. I know I have 4 right angles. I can stay there. We know all right angles are congruent because we know they're always 90 degrees. We know perpendicular lines form congruent adjacent angles. So if I know I've got perpendicular, I know angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 because we got perpendicular lines. We know if 2 angles are congruent and supplementary, then each angle is a right angle. So for example, let's switch colors here. If I have 2 angles that are congruent and supplementary, so let's say I've got angle 1 and angle 2. If I know angle 1 is congruent to angle 2, and I know they add to 180, then what I can say is I know each of these is a right angle. So no, angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. These are just reasons you can use in a proof. And if I have 2 angles form a linear, 2 congruent angles form a linear pair. So I know these angles are congruent, and I know they add to 180, then I know each of these angles are also right angles.